A racist white woman accuses a black man of stealing something from her wallet after she drops it and he returns it to her. The white woman is shocked when the police show up and they want to review the security footage. Darius walked through the crowded mall, navigating the sea of shoppers with casual ease. The shopping bags in his hands swayed lightly as he passed by the buzzing food court, the scent of pretzels and coffee hanging in the air. He wasn't in any rush, just enjoying his Saturday, scanning the rows of stores for something that might catch his eye. As he reached the entrance of a clothing store, something caught his attention on the floor near the entrance. A wallet. He paused and glanced around, but no one seemed to notice it. Without thinking too much, Darius bent down and picked it up, turning it over in his hands. Who just drops a wallet in the middle of a crowded place like this? He muttered to himself. Before he had time to look for an ID inside, a woman approached in a hurried, frantic manner. She was rifling through her purse, her face tight with frustration. "Excuse me," Darius called out, stepping toward her with the wallet extended in his hand. "Is this yours?" She snapped her head up and stared at him with wide eyes, her voice sharp. What are you doing with my wallet?" Her tone caught Darius off guard. He blinked, unsure of how the situation turned so quickly. I just found it on the floor over there," Darius explained, pointing to the spot near the store entrance. The woman, whose name he didn't yet know was Karen Lawson, stood frozen for a second, her eyes darting between him and the wallet in his hand. She wasn't calming down. Instead, her hand flew to her purse, checking the contents with quick, jerky movements. "You took something from it, didn't you?" she accused, her voice rising, drawing the attention of a few nearby shoppers. Darius frowned, still holding out the wallet. "No, I didn't take anything. I just wanted to return it to you." But Karen didn't seem to hear him. She stepped closer, her face tight with suspicion. "I'm missing cash," she snapped. "You had time to go through it, didn't you?" Darius took a step back, still holding the wallet out for her to take. "I didn't touch anything. I was just trying to help." Her voice grew louder, carrying over the background chatter of the mall. "You people always think you can get away with things like this." Darius's jaw tightened, and he glanced around. A few more people were watching now, but no one said anything. No one stepped in. The murmurs started, quiet whispers that carried in the spaces between Karen's raised voice and his own attempts to stay calm. "I'm not trying to get away with anything," he said, his voice low but firm. "I saw your wallet and wanted to give it back." "You're missing money?" one of the bystanders asked, stepping closer but not addressing Darius. Karen nodded, her gaze never leaving Darius, as if waiting for him to crack, to reveal some hidden guilt. "Yeah, it was in here when I left the last store and now it's gone." Darius sighed, extending the wallet once more, his patience wearing thin. "Check it, see for yourself." But Karen didn't seem interested in checking. Her voice stayed at the same accusatory pitch, and more people started to gather, forming a loose circle around them. "I know you took it," she insisted, shaking her head. "Just admit it." Darius looked around again, meeting the eyes of a few people standing nearby. None of them said anything. None of them moved. His fingers tightened slightly around the wallet, and he took a breath, trying to stay calm, trying to stop the situation from spiraling any further. "Look," he said, keeping his voice measured, "I'm trying to help you. If you think something's missing, I'm sorry, but I didn't take anything." Karen's eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with disdain. "I'm not buying it. I know how this works." He opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. It wasn't just about the wallet anymore. The looks from the crowd, the way Karen had shifted the blame onto him without a second thought, it all piled on top of him. He hadn't done anything wrong, but the weight of proving that fact suddenly felt enormous. And still, no one stepped forward to help. The crowd just watched, a wall of silent eyes and murmurs. Darius exhaled slowly, trying to keep his cool. This wasn't going to end with a calm explanation. He could feel it. "Ma'am," he said softly, though his voice carried an edge now. "I'm giving your wallet back because it's the right thing to do. I didn't take anything, and I'm not going to stand here and let you accuse me of something I didn't do." Karen snatched the wallet from his hand, her eyes narrowing as if he had just confessed. "We'll see about that." As she stormed off, rifling through the wallet, Darius remained where he stood. His shoulders were tense, his breath shallow. The crowd began to disperse, people slipping back into the ebb and flow of the mall as if nothing had happened. But for Darius, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Darius stood rooted to the spot, watching Karen storm away, still flipping through her wallet. The irritation lingered in his chest like a heavy stone. He took a breath, willing himself to shake it off. It wasn't the first time someone had jumped to conclusions about him, and he doubted it would be the last. But something about this situation dug deeper. Just as he was about to turn and walk in the other direction, Karen spun around, her face a shade redder than before. She came back toward him, her steps quicker, more deliberate. "You did take something," she yelled, waving her wallet in the air. "There's cash missing. It was here before, and now it's gone." Darius blinked in disbelief. "I didn't take anything," he repeated, his voice calm but firm. "I picked it up off the floor and gave it back to you. That's it." Karen crossed her arms, glaring at him. "Don't lie. You had plenty of time to take what you wanted. Just admit it and give it back." Darius glanced around again. People were looking, whispering. The crowd that had begun to thin out was now growing once more. A few faces stood out, some curious, some indifferent, but none stepping in to help. No one challenged her accusation. "Look," Darius said, his patience thinning. "I didn't steal anything from you. Check your bag again, or retrace your steps. Maybe you dropped the money somewhere else." Karen's expression only hardened. "I know what I had in my wallet. It's gone, and you're the one who picked it up." Darius clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. His voice was steady, but beneath the surface, anger simmered. "I'm not going to argue with you over this. I tried to help you by returning your wallet. I didn't take anything. If you lost your money, it's not my fault," Karen scoffed, her voice rising. "Oh, so now it's my fault?" Typical. A bystander, a middle-aged man in a baseball cap, stepped a little closer. "What's going on here?" Karen turned to him, her voice sharp and indignant. "This man just stole from my wallet, and now he's trying to act like nothing happened." Darius's pulse quickened, the anger that had been simmering now close to boiling. He shot a glance at the man. "I didn't steal anything. I found her wallet on the ground and gave it back. Now she's accusing me of taking money." The man shifted uncomfortably, but didn't say anything else. Another woman, standing a few feet away, was watching closely, but also remained silent. Darius could feel the tension building, like a pot about to overflow. The weight of the crowd's eyes bore down on him, but none of them seemed to care enough to say anything. Karen's voice cut through the silence again, louder this time. "You think you can just take what you want and walk away? You think no one's going to notice? Well, I'm not going to let you get away with this." Darius took a deep breath, his frustration now seeping into his tone. "I don't know what you're trying to do here, but I'm not going to stand here and let you accuse me of something I didn't do. If you're missing money, maybe you lost it somewhere else. But it wasn't me." The bystander in the baseball cap exchanged a glance with someone nearby, a silent, uncertain exchange. A few more people gathered closer, drawn by the raised voices. It was becoming a scene, and Darius was stuck in the middle of it. Karen wasn't backing down, though. She stepped even closer, her voice cold and condescending. "You're guilty. I know it. People like you always think you can get away with things like this. Well, not today." Darius's fists clenched at his sides, but he kept his voice level. "People like me? You don't even know me." Karen raised her chin, as if daring him to deny it. "I don't have to. It's obvious." He wanted to shout, wanted to push back against every word she was spewing at him, but he knew that would only make things worse. The bystanders already saw him as the problem. He could feel it in the way they looked at him, their hesitation to intervene speaking volumes. They didn't care what was true. They were waiting for him to slip up, to give them a reason to believe her. Darius's pulse pounded in his ears. He looked directly at Karen, his voice steady but hard. "I didn't take your money. If you want to check your wallet again, go ahead. But I'm not standing here while you insult me." Karen's lips curled into a sneer. "Oh, don't worry. I'll check everything. And if I find anything missing, I'm calling security." Darius exhaled slowly, his anger threatening to break through the surface. He glanced at the crowd once more. Still no one stepping in, no one saying a word. His gaze shifted back to Karen. "You do whatever you think you need to, but I'm done with this." Without waiting for her response, Darius turned to walk away, his body tense as he put distance between himself and the crowd. He could still hear Karen behind him, muttering accusations under her breath, but he didn't look back. The frustration gnawed at him, each step heavier than the last. This wasn't over, he knew that much. As he disappeared into the sea of mall shoppers, the knot in his stomach only tightened. Darius moved through the mall, his legs carrying him as far from Karen and her accusations as possible. The anger bubbled inside him, tightening his chest with every step. He tried to focus on the steady rhythm of his feet on the tiled floor, but her words echoed in his mind. "People like you." The phrase stung, even though he had heard it, or some version of it, countless times before. This wasn't new. He'd been here before in different places with different people, but the result was always the same: accusations, assumptions, and no one to defend him. He stopped outside another store, staring at a display without really seeing it. The bustling noise of the mall faded into the background as his thoughts swirled. Why did he even bother picking up that wallet? Why had he tried to help? He could have just left it there, And none of this would have happened. But then what? He wasn't the kind of person to ignore someone in need. That wasn't who he was. And yet somehow doing the right thing had only made things worse. As he leaned against the wall, trying to cool off, he felt a presence nearby. A couple of teenagers had been watching him, whispering to each other. He caught bits of their conversation. "Isn't that the guy from earlier?" one of them asked, nudging the other. "Yeah, I think so," the other said, glancing at Darius before quickly looking away. Darius shook his head and pushed himself off the wall. He wasn't in the mood to deal with stares or whispers. He just needed to put some distance between himself and that situation. Maybe if he walked far enough, the anger would simmer down. He headed toward a quieter part of the mall, away from the crowds, trying to find some space to breathe. His mind raced, replaying the confrontation over and over again. "You people always think you can get away with things like this." It wasn't just the words. It was the way she had looked at him, as though he were invisible before. But now that she had something to accuse him of, he was all she could see, all because he had tried to help. It made no sense. As he continued walking, a small part of him hoped someone from the crowd would have stepped in, would have said something, anything to defend him, but no one had. They just stood there watching. That silence, that indifference, hurt almost as much as Karen's words. Maybe they think I did something wrong, Darius thought, the knot in his stomach tightening. He knew it wasn't true, but the weight of the accusation had a way of making you question yourself, even when you hadn't done anything. He rounded a corner, deciding to step into a small electronics store to browse for a bit, hoping to clear his head. But the moment he stepped inside, the weight of the day still followed him. He couldn't shake it off. He drifted down the aisles, half looking at the gadgets on display. His eyes moved over the shelves, but his mind was still stuck in that moment with Karen, in front of those silent bystanders. It didn't matter that he had done the right thing. It didn't matter that he hadn't taken a single thing from her wallet. In the eyes of those people, he had already been judged the moment she started yelling. It wasn't just about the money. It never had been. Karen's accusations were rooted in something deeper, something uglier that neither of them had said out loud, but both of them knew was there. Darius ran a hand over his face, trying to shake off the frustration, but it clung to him like a second skin. He wasn't an angry person by nature. He didn't like confrontation, and he rarely let things get under his skin. But this felt different. This felt personal in a way he couldn't quite explain. As he stood in the electronics store pretending to browse, he overheard another conversation near the entrance. A pair of middle-aged women were talking, one of them recounting the earlier scene. "Did you see that guy arguing with the woman near the food court?" one of them said, her voice low but audible. "Yeah, she was accusing him of stealing, right?" the other replied. Darius stiffened, his back turned to them, but he listened closely. "I don't know," the first woman said. "He seemed pretty defensive. Maybe he did take something," the second woman said quietly. Why else would she be so upset? Darius clenched his jaw, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. He felt the heat rising again, the frustration creeping back to the surface. They didn't know anything, but they were already making judgments, already assuming the worst of him. It was like Karen's voice had planted a seed in their minds, and now it was growing, twisting the truth. He couldn't stand it anymore. He turned around, ready to confront them, to say something, anything to defend himself. But just as he was about to speak, he stopped himself. What good would it do? Would they even listen, or would they just see it as another sign that he was guilty? Darius swallowed hard, letting the words die on his tongue. Instead, he turned and walked out of the store, back into the bustling mall. This isn't over, he thought to himself. She's not going to let this go. And as much as he tried to put it out of his mind, the sinking feeling in his gut told him he was right. Darius kept walking, his body still tense from the weight of Karen's accusations and the murmurs from the bystanders. His hands were jammed deep in his pockets, his jaw clenched tight. The mall had always been a place to relax, a space to wander, window shop, maybe grab a bite to eat. But now, it felt like every set of eyes followed him. Every whisper was about him. He knew he had to cool off, but it was hard. The words, the accusations, clung to him like damp air, suffocating any attempt to let it go. His thoughts looped back to one question. Why had he tried to help in the first place? He turned a corner, leaving the crowded center of the mall behind, heading towards a quieter section filled with less busy stores. The noise began to fade, replaced by the faint sounds of soft jazz from a nearby shop. The crowd thinned out, but his thoughts remained loud. People like you. That one phrase kept gnawing at him, small but sharp, like a splinter he couldn't pull out. He'd heard things like it before, of course. It came with the territory of living in a world where people judged you before you even opened your mouth. But today, it felt like it hit harder. Maybe it was the crowd watching, or maybe it was just the fact that he was tired of always having to defend himself against things he hadn't done. As he walked, he felt his phone buzz in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a text from his sister, Nia, asking how his day was going. He stared at the screen for a moment, considering telling her about what had just happened, but then thought better of it. What would he even say? Hey Nia, guess what? I tried to help someone today, and now I'm a thief. No, that didn't feel right. Instead, he slipped the phone back into his pocket, deciding to answer her later when he wasn't so worked up. Darius found a small bench in a quiet corner near the entrance of a store that sold books and coffee. He sat down, letting his elbows rest on his knees, his head in his hands. He could hear the faint rustling of pages inside the bookstore, the comforting clatter of mugs on tables. It was the kind of place where he usually came to unwind, grab a coffee, and maybe pick up a new book to read on the weekends. But today, even this quiet corner couldn't shake the weight he carried. Why did no one say anything? That was another thing bothering him. The crowd had been there, dozens of people, watching the whole thing unfold, and not a single person had stepped in. No one had defended him. No one had said, "Hey, wait a minute. Maybe this guy didn't do anything." They just watched. He remembered the way they'd whispered, the way they'd looked at him like he was a spectacle. To them, he wasn't a man trying to return a lost wallet. He was just the angry black man in the middle of the mall, being accused by a white woman. And that was enough for most people to keep their mouths shut. He sat up straight, taking a deep breath. He knew better than to let it get to him like this. He'd spent years learning how to walk away, how to keep his cool, how to navigate situations where he was automatically the bad guy. But it didn't make it any easier. He wasn't going to let Karen's baseless accusations ruin his entire day. But the fact that she had so easily shifted the blame onto him gnawed at his sense of fairness. A group of teenagers walked past, laughing about something that had nothing to do with him. They didn't even look his way. The world kept moving, even as his thoughts felt stuck in place. Maybe I should just leave the mall, he thought. Go home, grab a beer, and forget about all this. But a small, stubborn part of him didn't want to let Karen win, didn't want to let her chase him out of a public place where he hadn't done anything wrong. Why should he have to be the one to leave? Why was it always on him to be the bigger person, to walk away quietly while people like Karen got to make accusations without consequence? Just as Darius was starting to calm down, convincing himself that the worst of the day was behind him, he heard the sound of footsteps approaching, fast and purposeful. His muscles tensed again. He turned to see Karen, and this time she wasn't alone. She was flanked by a mall security officer, a heavy-set man with a disinterested look on his face. Karen's expression was the same as before, hard, accusatory, and angry. She spotted Darius and pointed him out as if he were some criminal she'd been hunting down for hours. "There he is," she said, her voice sharp and loud, making sure everyone within earshot could hear her. "That's the guy." Darius exhaled, his jaw tightening again as the security officer approached. "Here we go again," he thought, already bracing himself for the next round of accusations. The officer, Blake, stopped in front of Darius, his face unreadable. He wasn't interested in getting into the details. Darius could see that right away. This was just another day on the job for him. Another argument he had to de-escalate so he could get back to his post. "Sir, I need to ask you a few questions," Blake said, his voice low and practiced, like he'd given this speech 100 times before. Darius stayed seated, his posture calm, but his eyes never left Karen. "Let me guess. She told you I stole from her?" Karen folded her arms, her voice dripping with satisfaction now that she had the authority on her side. "He took cash from my wallet. I'm sure of it. He ran off when I confronted him earlier." Darius scoffed, standing up slowly to face both of them. "I didn't run off. I walked away after you wouldn't stop accusing me of something I didn't do." Blake glanced between the two of them, his expression unchanged. "Is that true, ma'am? Did he walk away?" Karen huffed, her face reddening further. "Same thing. He's guilty. Just look at him." Darius clenched his teeth, the weight of her words pushing him closer to the edge. "Look at me. What does that even mean?" he asked, his voice finally cracking with frustration. Blake sighed, clearly uninterested in getting into a full-blown argument. "Let's just calm down. I'm here to figure this out." "Ma'am, are you sure something's missing?" Karen nodded emphatically. "Yes, I'm sure. He's the only one who could have taken it." Darius shook his head, biting back his anger. "I already told her I didn't take anything. If she's missing cash, that's her problem, not mine." Blake gave Darius a once-over, then turned back to Karen. "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna call the police and let them handle it." Darius's heart sank. The police? Really? All of this? Over something he didn't even do? Karen's face lit up, as if she had already won. "Good, let's get this sorted out." Darius wanted to argue, to tell Blake that this was ridiculous, that he shouldn't have to stand here defending himself against something so baseless. but he knew there was no point. If the police were coming, they'd get to the bottom of it. He just had to wait. Darius stood in place, his fists clenched at his sides as the security officer Blake radioed for backup. Karen, standing off to the side, had a triumphant look on her face, like she had already won the fight. It made Darius's skin crawl. He wanted to say something, anything to break the thick silence, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Not yet. The minutes dragged by, each one feeling longer than the last. Darius tried to breathe, tried to keep his anger in check, but how many times could he take this? How many more accusations before it became too much? He glanced around, noticing the people nearby who were now watching from a safe distance, their curiosity piqued by the arrival of security. More bystanders, just like earlier, silent, observing, waiting for a spectacle. A soft chime echoed from across the mall as the sliding doors opened, and 2 police officers stepped inside. Darius's stomach dropped at the sight of them. He had known this was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. The officers, led by Officer Daniels, an older man with salt and pepper hair and a weathered face, approached with a steady, measured walk. His partner, a younger woman with sharp eyes, followed closely behind. Daniels's expression was neutral, professional. He didn't look like a man who was about to rush to any conclusions. For a moment, Darius felt a small flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this could still end sensibly. Blake stepped forward to meet them. "We've got a situation here. He gestured toward Karen, claims this guy stole money from her wallet." Daniels nodded, then turned to face Darius and Karen. He studied them both for a moment, his eyes lingering on Darius as if sizing him up, but not in the same way Karen had earlier. More like he was trying to understand what kind of man Darius was. "All right," Daniels said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Let's get some statements. Ma'am, why don't you start?" Karen stepped forward, her arms still crossed tightly over her chest. She launched into her story with all the confidence in the world, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. "I was walking through the mall earlier and I dropped my wallet. This man," she pointed sharply at Darius, "picked it up, and when I checked it later, cash was missing. I know it was there before, and he's the only one who could have taken it." Daniels listened, his face giving away nothing, but Darius could feel his own pulse quickening. The way she twisted the story, making it sound like Darius had deliberately gone through her things, made his blood boil. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but Daniels raised a hand. "I'll get to you in a minute," Daniels said to Darius, his tone still calm. Karen continued, her words quick and heated. "When I confronted him, he just walked away, like he didn't have anything to hide. But I know he did it. He had to." Darius clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay quiet for now. Let her talk. The truth would come out soon enough. Daniels nodded slowly, then turned to Darius. "All right, sir. Your turn." Darius took a breath, keeping his voice even. "I saw her wallet on the ground, and I picked it up to return it. That's all. When I handed it to her, she started accusing me of stealing money, which I didn't do. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen, so I walked away. I didn't take anything from her wallet." Daniels studied Darius's face for a moment, then nodded again. "And you didn't see any money in the wallet when you picked it up?" "No," Darius said. "I didn't even open it. I just handed it back to her." Daniels looked back and forth between Darius and Karen, weighing their words. His face was still neutral, unreadable, but Darius could sense that he wasn't jumping to any conclusions. That gave him a little hope, at least. The younger officer, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "We could check the security footage," she suggested. "That might clear things up." Karen's face flushed slightly at the mention of footage, but she quickly masked it with another indignant glare. "Sure, check it. It'll prove what I've been saying." Darius stayed quiet, grateful for the suggestion. Finally, something concrete. He didn't have anything to hide, and maybe once they saw the footage, all this nonsense could end. Daniels nodded to Blake, who gestured toward the security office. "Come with me," Blake said, addressing both Darius and Karen. "We'll review the footage and settle this." As they walked toward the security office, the tension between Darius and Karen felt like a thick fog. Darius kept his focus forward, trying to ignore the burning gaze he could feel from her. He wasn't going to let her get the satisfaction of rattling him any further. Once inside the cramped security room, Blake pulled up the footage from earlier on a small monitor. The screen flickered to life, showing a top-down view of the mall's main corridor. There, plain as day, was the moment Darius bent down to pick up the wallet. He could see himself in the grainy footage, glancing around before spotting Karen and walking toward her. The officers watched closely as the video played. The footage showed Darius holding the wallet out to Karen, and her reaching for it, her face already twisted with suspicion. Then the confrontation began, with Karen stepping closer, her arms flailing as she accused him. Daniels leaned in slightly as the video continued. The footage clearly showed Darius handing the wallet to Karen, never opening it, never doing anything but returning it. Karen's accusations had already started, but there was nothing in the footage to support her claim. Darius could feel a small sense of relief washing over him. Finally, something was going his way. Daniels straightened up and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, from what I see here, it looks like he handed you the wallet without taking anything. There's no evidence to suggest he stole any money." Karen's face turned bright red, but she wasn't backing down. "The footage doesn't show everything. It's not just about the footage. It's about what I know. I know he took something." Daniels held up a hand. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the footage. It's clear he didn't take anything from your wallet. I think it's time we put this to rest." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught in her throat. She stood there fuming, her fists clenched at her sides, but she had nothing left to say. Daniels turned to Darius, giving him a small nod. "Looks like you're clear. You can go." Darius exhaled, feeling the weight lift off his shoulders. He nodded back, grateful, but still exhausted from the entire ordeal. He turned to leave the room, but not before casting one last glance at Karen. Her face was a mix of anger and disbelief, but he didn't care anymore. She could believe whatever she wanted, but the truth had been proven. As Darius walked out of the security office and back into the mall, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was over. Finally. But as much as he was relieved, there was still a part of him that couldn't shake the frustration, the lingering bitterness of being accused in the first place. The truth had come out, but it hadn't erased the damage that had been done, not completely. He walked back through the mall, his pace steady, his mind racing. All he wanted to do now was leave this place behind, go home, and let the day fade away. But he knew, deep down, that he wouldn't forget this. Not anytime soon. As Darius walked back into the main corridor of the mall, his relief from being cleared by the security footage was short-lived. He could still feel the weight of the encounter hanging over him, like a shadow that wouldn't quite let go. It wasn't just Karen's baseless accusation, but the way she had been so sure of herself, so sure that he was guilty. And now, even after the footage had proven his innocence, he could still feel the echoes of her words reverberating in his mind. It wasn't long before he heard footsteps approaching from behind. He knew who it was before he even turned around. "Wait!" Karen's voice rang out, sharp and piercing. Darius stopped in his tracks, his back still turned to her. He didn't want to deal with this anymore. Not now, not after everything had already been settled. But he knew, from the determined tone in her voice, that she wasn't finished. She wasn't going to let it go. Slowly, Darius turned around to face her. She was storming toward him, her face flushed with anger, her fists balled at her sides. Behind her, the two police officers, Daniels and his partner, followed closely, looking slightly exasperated. "I don't care what the footage says," Karen spat as she reached him. "You took something from me. I know you did." Darius sighed, his frustration barely held in check. "The footage cleared me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I didn't take anything. It's over." Karen shook her head violently, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No, it's not over. You can't just walk away from this. You can't just get away with this." Daniel stepped forward, holding up a hand to de-escalate. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the evidence, and it's clear he didn't steal anything. There's no reason to continue this." But Karen wasn't listening. She turned to Daniels, her voice rising in pitch. "You don't understand. He's lying. The footage doesn't show everything. I know what I had, and it's gone now. He took it. I'm sure of it." Darius felt a spark of anger flare up again, but he kept his voice measured. "You can keep accusing me all you want, but it doesn't change the facts. I didn't steal from you." Daniels, clearly trying to remain patient, stepped in between them. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. There's no further evidence to support your claim. This situation has already been resolved." But Karen wouldn't back down. She turned to the younger officer, trying a different angle. "He's guilty. You can't just let him walk away. Aren't you going to do something?" The young officer, who had been quiet up until now, exchanged a glance with Daniels. She sighed softly, clearly trying to remain professional. "Ma'am, we've done our job. We've reviewed the footage, and there's no reason to pursue this further. He's innocent." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. She threw her hands in the air as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're all blind. How can you not see what's happening here? He's guilty. I know it." Darius stood there, feeling exhausted, both physically and mentally. He had done everything right. He had proven his innocence. But somehow in Karen's mind, that wasn't enough. No matter what the facts were, she had already decided who he was, what he was. Nothing was going to change her mind. Daniels took a deep breath. Clearly tired of the back and forth, he stepped closer to Karen, his voice firm now. "Ma'am, this situation is over. If you continue to cause a disturbance, We're going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Karen's eyes widened with shock. You're going to throw me out? For what? I'm the one who's been wronged. Daniels remained calm, his tone unwavering. Ma'am, you've made your accusations. We've reviewed the evidence, and there's nothing to support your claim. Continuing to cause a scene is only going to make things worse for you. For a moment, Karen just stood there, her mouth opening and closing as if she were searching for the right words, the right argument, but nothing came. Her face turned bright red, a mix of anger and embarrassment, but she still refused to back down. You're all making a mistake, she hissed, her voice trembling. You'll see. You'll see. I was right. Daniels gave her a hard look. Ma'am, this is your last warning. Either leave the premises voluntarily, or we'll have to escort you out. Darius stood silently, watching the scene unfold with a mix of frustration and disbelief. He had never seen someone so determined to hold on to a lie, so unwilling to accept the truth. Even now, with the police telling her she was wrong, she still clung to her accusation, as if admitting she was wrong would somehow unravel her entire world. Karen stared at Daniels for a long moment, her eyes narrowing. But finally, after what felt like an eternity, she turned and walked away, muttering under her breath. The young officer followed her, ensuring that she actually left the mall. Daniels watched her go, then turned back to Darius, his expression apologetic. Sorry about all that. You're clear to go. Darius nodded, but the relief he had felt earlier was fading, replaced by exhaustion and frustration. Thanks, he said quietly. Daniels paused, as if considering whether or not to say more. He shifted his weight slightly, then gave Darius a small nod. You handled that well. Better than most would have. Darius managed a small, tired smile. I've had practice. Daniels raised an eyebrow but didn't push further. Take care of yourself, he said, before turning to follow his partner and Karen out of the mall. Darius stood there for a moment, watching the police walk away, the weight of the day pressing down on him. It was over finally, but instead of feeling triumphant, he just felt tired. He hadn't done anything wrong, but he had still spent hours defending himself, proving his innocence, and enduring the humiliation of being accused in front of so many people. He shook his head, rubbing the back of his neck. How many times does this have to happen before people finally stop jumping to conclusions? He wondered. He didn't have an answer. All he knew was that it was time to go home. Darius turned and headed toward the exit of the mall. He could still feel the eyes of strangers on him, but this time, he didn't care. Let them think whatever they wanted. He knew the truth, and that was enough. As he walked out into the bright sunlight of the parking lot, he took a deep breath, trying to shake off the last traces of the day's tension. He wasn't naive enough to believe this was the last time something like this would happen. But for now, at least, he could leave it behind. And that was something. The bright sunlight hit Darius as he stepped out into the parking lot. He squinted, letting his eyes adjust while the noise of the mall faded into the background. He still felt the frustration simmering under his skin, the weight of the entire ordeal hanging over him. Karen's accusations, her refusal to accept the truth, the bystanders who had said nothing, it all felt like a heavy cloud, even after everything had been resolved. He headed toward his car, fishing for his keys in his pocket. He could hear the faint sound of traffic beyond the parking lot, the everyday hum of the world going on as if nothing had happened. But for him, the day felt like it had stretched into something much longer, much heavier. As he reached his car, he paused for a moment, resting his hand on the door handle. The parking lot was quieter than the mall, but he still felt like he was being watched, not physically, but mentally. Like the accusations Karen had thrown at him still lingered in the air. Even after the security footage had cleared him, he could still hear her voice, sharp and accusing, in the back of his mind. You can't just get away with this. Darius shook his head, trying to push the thought away. He hadn't gotten away with anything. He had done the right thing. He had picked up her wallet, tried to help, and ended up being accused of theft for his trouble. And now, even after the police had cleared him, there was a part of him that still felt the sting of the accusation. He opened the car door and sat down, resting his hands on the steering wheel. For a moment, he just sat there, breathing deeply, letting the quiet of the car surround him. He could feel the tension in his shoulders, in his chest, slowly unwinding. It was over. He had been vindicated. He could go home now and put the whole thing behind him. But it wasn't that simple. Even though the security footage had shown the truth, even though the police had told him he was free to go, there was still that lingering feeling. The way Karen had looked at him, as though his innocence didn't matter. The way she had been so certain that he was guilty, so certain that his very existence was a threat. And the worst part? The way the crowd had watched, saying nothing. No one had stood up for him. No one had even bothered to ask his side of the story. They had all just assumed, just as Karen had, that he must have done something wrong. Darius leaned back in his seat, staring out the windshield. He'd been through this before. Not the exact situation, but similar enough. The accusations, the suspicions, the way people looked at him, he was used to it. He had learned long ago that sometimes, no matter how innocent you were, people would still find a way to blame you. But today it had cut deeper than usual. He pulled out his phone and saw a text from his sister, Naya, asking if he was still up for grabbing dinner later. He hesitated, staring at the message. Part of him wanted to go, to sit with his sister and vent about the ridiculousness of the day. But another part of him just wanted to go home, to be alone for a while, to process everything that had happened. After a moment, he typed back a quick response. Let's do dinner another day. Something came up. He hit send, then tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. He wasn't ready to talk about it, not yet. As he started the car, he replayed the moment in the security office, watching the footage with Officer Daniels. The way it had shown everything clearly, him picking up the wallet, handing it to Karen, never opening it, never taking anything. He had been relieved when they watched the footage. It had felt like proof that he wasn't just defending himself against lies, that the truth was right there for everyone to see. But even with the footage, Karen had refused to believe it. She had clung to her belief that he was guilty, that he had somehow tricked everyone, even the camera, and that part, more than anything, was what made him feel so tired. The truth was right in front of her, but it didn't matter. Some people just won't see the truth no matter how clear it is, Darius thought to himself. He pulled out of the parking space and merged into the slow stream of cars leaving the mall. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. As he drove, he found himself thinking about Officer Daniels. The way the officer had handled the situation, calmly, without rushing to conclusions. Daniels had taken the time to look at the evidence, to listen to both sides, and had done his job with a level of professionalism that Darius appreciated. Darius had wanted to thank Daniels more than he had, but the exhaustion of the day had dulled his words. Still, he knew that not everyone in Daniels' position would have handled it the same way. The way Daniels had spoken to him, the quiet respect in his voice, had been a reminder that not everyone made the same assumptions Karen had. But even that wasn't enough to erase the frustration entirely. As he drove, Darius found himself lost in thought, thinking about all the times he had been in situations like this, times when people had looked at him and made assumptions, times when he had been forced to defend himself against accusations that were baseless. It had happened in small ways, in ways that most people wouldn't even notice, but they added up over time, and today, it had all come to a head. He didn't know what it would take to change things. He didn't know how many more times he would have to prove his innocence before people stopped jumping to conclusions. But he did know one thing. He wasn't going to let this break him. He wasn't going to let Karen's words or the crowd's silence define him. As he turned onto the highway, heading toward home, Darius felt the tightness in his chest begin to ease. He could breathe a little easier now, the mall and all its tensions fading in the rearview mirror. The truth had come out. Even if it hadn't changed Karen's mind, he had done the right thing. That was what mattered. And though it still weighed on him, the frustration and the anger, he knew he could carry it. He had carried it before. He would carry it again. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, Darius drove on, determined not to let the day define him.